So I have a notebook which has some of my favourite quotes from books I've read. And one of my favourite quotes in this book is, "If the drama is bad, if the film says nothing, if the play is hollow, sting me with the theremin loudly. I'll think I'm responding to the play when it's only the tactile reaction to vibration. But I don't care, I just like solid entertainment." Now this quote is from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which was published in the 1950s. And I think it's a very relevant quote for the modern world. So firstly, I'd like to preface this video by saying I actually think modern books are very good. There's quite a lot of discourse online at the moment because I love watching a video about books where people are talking about how modern books are kind of bad. And I don't think that is the case. I think there are so many modern books out there that are fantastic works of literature and that are just as good as books written in any time period in history. For example, I love Flashlight by Susan Choi, My Brilliant Friend by Eleanor Ferrante, Anything by Ella Shafak, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, books you can see behind me here, The Fifth Season, The Lives of Locke Lamora. There are such great works of fiction being written nowadays. You cannot say modern books are bad when you are living in the time period when the Stormlight Archive has been written. But I think the reason this conversation is happening online is because there is a lot of bad stuff being written in the modern age, and there's a lot of bad stuff being written that is gaining a lot of popularity as well. So in this video, I want to discuss why this is happening and why this is kind of a bad thing. So firstly, why is this happening? I think it's predominantly happening because of the internet and because of artificial intelligence. So the way people are predominantly being entertained in the 21st century is very different to any century ever. People are scrolling short form content on social media and attention spans are lesser. So it's no wonder that this change in society has altered the way a lot of books are being written. A lot of people would rather watch easy short form content on social media than read a 50-page scene exploring the subtext of the quote. Maybe we really are made of the same clay, maybe we really are condemned blameless to the same identical mediocrity. That's Eleanor Ferrante there. One of my favourite writers. And in the same way, to some extent, I think a lot of people would prefer to read an easy page turner that is just entertaining, doesn't really make you think that in depth about things, than a book that is quite heavy, exploring really large topics, that is making you really think about what it is to be alive, what it is to be a person. And does that matter? Surely it's better that people are reading like anything. Like, does it really matter what they're reading? And to some extent, I do agree with this. I think the fact that 40% of people in the UK didn't read a book last year is really bad, and so people reading anything is a good thing. However, I think it is quite sad that a lot of things that are being published are written sort of in a fast fashion type way, where they're written as like a throwaway book just to read and keep you entertained, but not really linger after that. Rather than a book that, is really written to affect your soul. And I'm aware that this could come across as pretentious. Never mind. To counter the argument this is pretentious, maybe I will talk about why we need good books, why these books that really affect your soul are important to society. So I think firstly, the more that simple, poorly written books are brought into the literary sphere, the more that becomes the norm, and the more people think that they can publish something that is quite mediocre because these other writers have become successful at doing so. I think that invites people to use AI and to write books that are very surface level, because why work really hard and spend years on a book when you can publish something easy and make money from it? This, on a grand scale, can cause books to become commodities for cheap entertainment. I do feel that the book just has more ability than any other art form to really affect you as a person. And I think that's because it's a very intimate experience reading a book. You read a book at your own pace. You are sitting there and you decide how fast it goes. If there's a line that you really like, you can sit with it for a minute before moving on. I think because of the internet, people aren't inclined to challenge themselves intellectually as much. And I think as a consequence, that does leave societies more susceptible to harmful propaganda and ideologies infiltrating the system, because people aren't so critically engaged and so they can be more easily influenced. Books have always been a great tool for exploring who you are as a person and how you view different things. And I really do think reading books just makes you a better person. So firstly, you have a society that's reading less and less books. And then secondly, you have a society that is more inclined to read books that are simple and poorly written. That is not, I think, a good thing. I want to include in this video a short part about Freida McFadden, because I think she is one of the culprits that is writing these simple, poorly written books that are entertaining, but that don't really have anything else to say. And Freida McFadden is the writer of over 30 thrillers. She has sold over 6 million copies. Her most famous book is The Handmaid, which was turned into a movie. In this video, I want to talk about The Intruder, which is a book I recently read, and I was really surprised by how poorly it was written. And I think my main issue with Freida McFadden is she treats the reader like an idiot. I felt like she thought that I was so stupid while I was reading the book. She didn't allow me to piece anything together on my own. And I have quite a few examples. I'll tell you a few. So for example, we have this young girl. People at school are calling her Smeller. This is not a nice thing. And I came to the conclusion very quickly that she was called Smeller because her name was Ella, because I can see at the top of the page, we're seeing from Ella's perspective, they're calling her Smeller. I can piece those two things together. But Freida McFadden, she's like, maybe my audience can't do that. So she's like, Smeller, you know, because my name is Ella. She's not confident that we can piece together the fact that she's called Smeller because her name is Ella, so she feels that she needs to tell us that that is the case. Another time, going out, that must be my mother has a date, which explains why she is all dressed up and wearing so much makeup. Now, we have already been told that the mother is wearing a lot of makeup and is dressed up. We can assume just from that alone that she is going on a date. She is going somewhere where she wants to look nice. Let us come to the conclusion of where we think she's going. We can do that. We don't need to be told it. Another time, Brittany always gets top grades. She's got an A in every class. Those two sentences mean the exact same thing. Why are you saying the same thing twice? And also, my least favourite one is the main character has a girl in her home. She doesn't know how old the girl is. The girl at one point gives her a look, and the main character thinks, yes, definitely a teenager. So now the main character has established in her own mind that yes, this girl is definitely a teenager. As the audience, we're like, okay, the main character thinks this is definitely a teenager. Then a few pages later, the girl says, that's none of your business, she said. And the main character thinks, yes, definitely a teenager. She thinks the same thing again. We've already established that she's a teenager. You say the same thing again. And this is not necessarily representative of how the author thinks that her readers are stupid. It's more representative of how this book has not been edited. This book, that's such a mistake to put that in there twice. That's just a sign that the writer was writing and didn't realise that she put it in it twice. And no editor read through it, or the author had not read through the book and seen that error. And it's not to say that if you like this book, you're wrong for liking it. It was an entertaining book, but I don't think it's a subjective view that this was poorly written. I think it's very clear that this was a poorly written book. Anyway, so why are bad books selling? Why is Freida McFadden such a popular author despite her books being bad? I think it's just because in the modern life, so much of how we live is about how easy we can make it. The reason that AI has been created and the reason so many companies are trying to implement it is because it suggests that life is going to be easier. When actually, I think in many ways, we shouldn't want an easy life necessarily. Now, I want peace as much as possible, but I also don't want to be a passive plain person blending into the wall behind me, not living actively in any sense. And I find it quite sad that books that are a bit more intelligent, challenging, that make you think things on a deeper level, are sometimes referred to as hard or difficult, because that they may be sometimes things that you don't understand, but that isn't a bad thing. I think it's actually wonderful when you read a book and there's something that you can't quite get your head around and you need to sit with for a while, because that means that you're living more actively. You're allowing the elasticity of your mind to spread and not remain stagnant. In Fahrenheit 451, the society of that world, their books have been banned. but not just by the government, but by the people in the world. People were more interested in easy to consume entertainment. They stopped being interested in books, and the government in that world realised that it was a lot easier to influence the society if they weren't educated, if they weren't reading. And so they banned the books, and society just let it happen because we just want to scroll, you know? I think in some ways that is slowly happening in the world that we see today. And I think that's why there is conversation on the internet about how some modern books aren't that great. And so to finish, I think it's very important to just read whatever you like, truly. But I think it's also important to be mindful about how that writer is treating you as the reader. If they're treating you like an idiot, you can revolt against that. You can be like, actually, I want to read something maybe a bit smarter. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this conversation. What do you think of the modern literary landscape? And I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye bye.